Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is December 13th, 2023. It's 6:01 p.m. and I'd like to welcome you to the Columbus City Council meeting for tonight. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business tonight is approval of the consent agenda. Would someone like to make the motion?
I'll make the motion, Ron, to approve motions 3 through 10.
Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
Are there any questions or any discussion?
This is Rob. I had caught Connor before the meeting, so I believe that should all be good, but it was in regards to the hearing with the conduit bond. So with those changes, I'd approve it as well.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Is there anyone here who would like to speak at the public open forum or online? Hearing none, we'll move on to the public hearing, discussion, and motion for the Waldoch Drainage and Utility Easement Vacation Petition. And that's pages 1 through 10 of our packet tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
I'm sorry?
I would like to waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
Very good. Do I need to make a motion or not? No. No, okay. All right. So
Are you going to review the what would?
I have my notes. Hang on. I was a liaison again. Sorry. I have them somewhere. It's a little half sheet. So I don't have them on top, so I can do it by memory, and you can add anything you'd like. Yep. If I forget. So last Wednesday night, the Planning Commission met. All members were present except for Judy Huntash. And there was a public hearing for property owner Lucille Waldoch, LLC. John Waldoch was here, and he made the presentation to the Planning Commission. And we had discussion. So it's a vacation of easement. So we discussed all of that. There was some input from the next door neighbor. So we discussed that. And I think you guys are ready to speak on that issue. And the chairwoman is here, so if there's anything more, we can get it all on the record for tonight. So the vote was passed to the council from the Planning Commission unanimously for approval of the request. So what would you like to add, Sue?
So this is Sue, and I did attend the meeting virtually, so I listened in on the discussion. And I heard the request from Roger Nace, that's the neighbor that had a question at the meeting. And so there was, the request that the Waldoch has for the utility and drainage easement, there's no issue with that. I think it meets the requirements, and I don't see any reason, we're not disputing that at all. But what I believe I heard Roger Nace's concern, it dates back to the meeting in October of 2021 when the original plat was done. And I was at that meeting, and we did pull the notes from that meeting. And on October 6th, there was the public hearing, and Roger Nace requested a 50-foot buffer between his property and, which is on the north side of the Waldoch property. And it was agreed on, and it was in the planner's report on October 18th, 2021, and it's called out as it was on the preliminary plat recommendations, number 3, subdivision development agreement, including provisions for and they're calling it a conservation easement on the northerly lot line. And then that was in the notes of the city council meeting when it was passed on October 27th. So I just wanted to point out for the record, it's not actually in the recommendations or anything about the fence. So he wants the fence to be not on the lot line, but over after where the easement starts, which everybody kind of agreed that couldn't happen until somebody purchases the property and they do their plat, however they're going to develop the land. But he also didn't want the trees removed. And I think everybody's agreeable to that, but there's not a way to put it into the record. But I think we should be able to put it into the record, because what happens 1, 2, 3 years down the line, and, the land gets sold, and then somebody's, doing the engineering drawing, who's going to remember that? And I know that Roger should, if he's still living there, get a notification again, and he'll come to the meeting. But it would just be nice to be able to put something in the planner's report that states that it was agreed upon. So I had called Bill today, and we talked a little bit about what could we do. And so I don't know, Janet, if you wanted to clarify anything, or anybody else, or...
No, I mean, you and I had the same, goal of trying to memorialize that prior agreement, but not knowing how to do that in a way that was discoverable in the future. And so if you have an idea, I think that would be great. We spoke with Elizabeth about it. I think you suggested just making sure it got in our minutes, because the minutes are always discoverable. And if somebody goes back, they should see that. And so I don't know if there's another way of doing it other than that, but I would like to honor his request in some way, understanding that it can't be part of the findings or recommendations for the plat. It's just not, it's not where it belongs, but I don't know where else it can be.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as I discussed with Councilmember Wagman today, the type of conditions that would run with the plat are not these, right? Those are development conditions, buffers, tree installation. All of that is really the subject of a conditional use permit, and so that would be the appropriate place for it. So I think, as you did, in this round, you went back and looked at the 2021 notes. So I think it's important that this discussion be memorialized in the minutes, and that way it's discoverable as you go forward. Now, the only thing that operates as a condition is a condition, right? So the only thing that's legally enforceable is an actual, condition of approval. So that's really, at the end of the day, if you're a adjoining property owner, or even if you're the subject property's owner, you want those conditions to be clearly spelled out so they can be enforceable. And since we don't have a conditional use permit, we don't have the vehicle by which that condition would attach. So I think putting in the minutes is a good plan, and we have pretty robust minutes, so I think that it'll get there.
Mr. Mayor, you have Councilmember Bush has his hand raised.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. And sorry I'm not again there tonight. I had COVID, confirmed COVID over the week here, and then I was trying to test, so I'll see if I'd be able to come back, but still negative, so I remain at home. So in the minutes, Bill, I was going to ask Sue the question, but now we'll just leave that as discussion in the minutes, and it won't be anything about the fence having to be 60 feet or whatever the buffer he wanted off that it'll just be that we talked about it and it's nothing that's binding at this point.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, yes, that's correct. It's not it's a discussion item, so it's not a binding condition. It'll be incumbent upon the property owners, when they get notice of that hearing, to bring forward their concerns, or if council members or planning commissioners want to note the concerns in the record. It doesn't, it's not enforceable as a condition.
Thank you, Bill and Mayor.
Thank you. And also, Rob, if we don't see your hand, just speak up. Your hand on the,
Yeah, sorry, it's kind of goofy. I just didn't want to jump in front of anyone.
a tiny little hand from way back here. So anyway. Mr. Waldoch is here, and Mrs. Waldoch. Is there anything you would like to add or discuss with us?
Yes, I'm John Waldoch, 6755 Pine Street in Columbus. The only thing, and it is just a discussion, but I'd like to say we've already got the conservation easement in there, which is legal and is binding. And if I were owning the land, of course, I would want that fence on the property line, because that conservation easement is like a park preserve. So whoever might buy that land someday will want to walk their dogs on that park reserve, not give that away. So just, if we're making a discussion, that's my thought on that. Conservation easement would be part of the property, not put a fence up so somebody else can use it.
All right.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I would say legally the property owner has a right to put the fence where they want. I don't see any discussion item there. I think the question is, what is an appropriate buffer? Particularly where you have an industrial development next to a residential property. I think that's fair game for when that applicant comes in. Yeah. And I would see, Mr. Waldoch, something like, if those trees are removed, then there would be replacement landscaping or something like that. We've done that before in the CI district, the Lake Drive district. So when I discussed it with the council member, to me, that's the kind of reasonable condition that can run with a development. I don't think there's any way that we can dictate you not putting the fence on your property line. So if that helps clarify things.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else, anyone?
Mr. Mayor, we will have to open the public hearing for the vacation of the easement. Should anybody want to comment, then we can close the hearing and then we can move on to motions.
All right. So I would like to, at this time, open a public hearing. Is there anyone here or online who would like to testify? Hearing none and seeing none, I'll close that portion of the hearing with the right to reopen it if necessary, and I'll bring it back to the board. Do we have any more questions or discussion on this issue?
Nope.
All right. Do we have a number?
2318.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2318, vacating a portion of the drainage and utility easements on Lot 4 and Lot 5, Block 1 of the Waldoch addition, subject to the recording Waldoch second additional plat. Is there a second?
Ron, I'll second it.
Any other questions?
And I just want to make a clarification for the council. The reason why there's that one condition is if they don't record the plat, then we wouldn't vacate the easements, because then the original lot lines would remain. So that's the reason for that condition.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. So then we'll move on to the Waldoch second edition preliminary and final plat, pages 11 through 23 in our packet. So Elizabeth, would you like to review this for us quickly?
Sure.
A little
Mr.
bit.
Mayor and council members, the applicant has submitted a preliminary and final plat. In this particular case, they're just simply moving a lot line between lots 4 and 5. So they are not creating a new lot. They're not taking lots away, just trading acreage between 2 lots. It is a second edition, so we waive out a lot of the requirements because the first edition did the wetland delineation and all the requirements. The Planning Commission is recommending approval along with staff, subject to the conditions as in the planner's memo. And in this particular case, there is a development agreement standing on the property today. And what we will ask our attorney to do is to write the First Amendment to that development agreement, moralizing any of the conditions that are in the second edition. So that will be just a little bit different than what you normally see, which is a development agreement in this case. There are some issues from the first development agreement that will carry over, in particular the road improvement. So there are some improvements, but again, the development agreement stands, and then the amendment will just include the additional conditions.
Very good. Any other questions, anyone?
Well, this is Sue. I just have one question. So in talking about that same topic, in the original findings of fact, it did have in those recommendations that 50-foot easement, conservation easement. So would that carry over also? I didn't see it listed in here.
It would.
Yes, because it's already established on these lots, and we're not removing it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, anyone? So then I'll make a motion to approve the Waldoch Second Edition preliminary and final plat, subject to preliminary plat conditions 1 through 7 and final plat conditions 1 through 8 in the planner's memo dated 12/08/2023. Is there a second?
Ron, I'll second it.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye?
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. So that takes care of that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're going to skip number 14. We'll move on to 15, the 2024 Columbus meeting schedule, pages 34 through 36.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is Lori Spangler, Deputy Clerk. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can now.
Very good. I would like to draw your attention to page 34 of the agenda packet.
Okay.
And this is the proposed calendar of meetings for 2024 meetings.
Okay. Any changes, Lori, from what's written?
What you will see in there, I've given you some options, and the ones that we specifically need to look at are the City Council workshop in August is dated August 13th, which is the second Tuesday, is a primary election.
Okay.
So we need to pick a different date for the City Council workshop if you're interested in having a meeting that month. So if you go down to August, I did leave that empty as that the traditional second Tuesday is the primary elections.
So everybody, what works better, Monday or Wednesday, Monday, Thursday?
Or the week before, or the week after.
Yep. Let me grab my calendar.
There are calendars at your stations right behind on 2023, if you want to turn those around.
We'll have the whole week open, so anybody else?
Yeah, Monday, I don't know, was that brought up the 12th, maybe?
Yep.
That sounded like that was an option.
Okay.
I can't do Mondays.
Otherwise, if we eliminate it, maybe for that month. If there's any taste for that, otherwise, I'd say move it to that Monday is my take.
Well, how about the week before, on the 6th?
I'm available.
That works for me.
I hate
Mondays aren't good for me either.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually.
So that would actually even work better. So,
Okay.
and then we'd have planning commission on that 7th, is it?
Correct. Planning Commission will be the 7th.
Okay. Yeah, I can make that work.
Okay.
Ron, does that work for you?
Anything works for me.
All right.
I'm easy.
He's retired. He's got all that time.
Oh, come on now.
All right. Anything else, Laurie, for us?
Yes, I would like you to also draw your attention to the Planning Commission calendar. And at that point, on June 18th or 20th, you would have to look at, if that was what you were looking at, as June 19th is now a recognized federal holiday. So we would have to look at another alternative for June for a Planning Commission.
What about a federal holiday?
Juneteenth will be the Wednesday, which was designated a planning commission meeting. So we will not be able to hold a meeting on that day. So we have to look at an alternative date.
Is Juneteenth now a federal holiday?
I didn't hear that part.
Yes, it is recognized a federal holiday.
And state.
I think someone might not be on mute.
Well, what about Tuesday, the day before?
That works for me.
Well, we have two planning commissioners out there. We can
Oh.
also make sure it works for them. What do you two think?
Check your calendars.
Say the 18th doesn't work for me, Mayor.
Okay, but it's
So
a
the-
planning commission. Are you able to zoom in or something?
Yep, I can make that work. Zoom.
Okay, let's,
Because the normal meeting would have been on the 19th, Lori, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's no problem.
So it looks like we're moving it to the 18th. That's okay for you guys? Okay.
18th of June for planning commission.
With making those changes, I find no others unless you guys have reviewed this. I will continue and have this published then.
Say, through the mayor, Lori, will we have to close the offices that day then on that June 19th?
Correct. We will have
Okay,
to.
so are we gonna need to make a motion now or later to do that? Or is that just automatically closed by federal regulations?
I think we recognized the new holiday last year, so it was
Okay.
approved going forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Lori.
I will take these changes then and proceed with them with everyone's approval.
Following a motion, yep.
Yeah, I can do the
We do need a
motion.
motion?
So this is Janet. I move to approve the 2024 meeting schedule as presented with the following two changes. Moving the council workshop to August 6th from the 13th, and moving the planning commission meeting from June 19th to June 18th.
I'll second
Rob,
that.
second.
Oh, go ahead, Rob seconded. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Yes, aye. Our schedule is set.
Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Now we're on to the discussion of the 2024 final levy and budget that we discussed in our workshop pretty strongly yesterday. So let's take it out and go through it again. Maybe you can give us the highlights, Elizabeth, or if there, and other questions, whoever has them.
Mr. Mayor and council members, we talked in our workshop and in our preliminary levy workshops. We had several meetings during the preliminary levy where we talked about a lot of different things throughout the year. You set your goals and you set the capital improvement schedules. And in that process, we are now looking at a net decrease for a tax rate of over 15%. So I think this year we've met goals that we've set in place over many years, and we had indicated that when there was commercial development, we wanted to have tax relief to residential properties, and now I think we're seeing, as the city is seeing, they're seeing that come to fruition with all of the commercial development we've had over the last 3 to 5 years. So looking at overall Anoka County, I know you've received your tax statements. I think our city leads in the amount of decrease. I don't think any other city had a lesser decrease in their overall levies. So I think those are all positive things and a good reflection of all of the discussion and that we had throughout the 5 to 6 meetings that we talked about. I have updated the tax rate comparison in the prior years, and also because it was a prior year mistake that was in yesterday's version of the tax rate comparison. But I do want to bring your attention to one thing, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands what's going on here. I know we've talked about fiscal disparities a lot over the last 3 years, and I wanted to actually have you look at the 2023 actuals. And if you look at that certified levy, it was $4,213,000 and change. And if you look at our area-wide disbursement, it was $247,028. What will happen to us as a city next year, because we had such a large tax rate decrease? We will see a decrease in the area-wide allocation again, and we are seeing the decrease this year, because if you look at the levy, it's $4,213,336, and the area-wide allocation is $227,390. So you're seeing that even though that you're looking at and being very responsible on how money is being spent, the formula works a little bit against the city in that vein, indicating that you've had a tax decrease, and in the formula, it then says you don't need as much money in order to offset it. So when you look at the other side, the reason why you are seeing that 0.49% is because you have the less fiscal disparities disbursement. So you have that net 30,000 that you now have to levy, that you didn't have to levy last year. So it's a net increase, and so that's why you got that 0.5% increase in the overall percentage. So I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that that is correct. You know what I mean? Because you didn't get as much physical disparities allotment, that's what caused the net increase. There isn't another way for you to address that. In addition, we did take into consideration market value increases this year, where last year when we looked at our overall levy, we looked at a 9%. This year we increased it to 12%. So overall, property owners, unless they did a very large addition or they had a lot of improvements on their property, they should have seen either net stable taxes, or they should have seen a decrease in the city line. Other lines, they had different influences, and I think there was an increase in Anoka County. But overall, that was the only difference between yesterday and today. I can certainly take any questions that perhaps property owners might have in our budget, where we focused on. We primarily just kept status quo, which is why we were able to decrease the levy, and we also retired some debt. So between those two factors, we were able to decrease the overall impact, but we kept the levy is just about $300 less than last year. So it was right at the same point. So I think it was a team effort between staff and council that we were able to deliver a budget in this manner.
All right. Any questions? Anyone?
No, but thank you for the explanation on the levy number, because I was going to ask about that, and it makes total sense. And I don't know, Bill, if you want to just quickly mention that you guys will once again be trying to help us figure out how to change the trajectory of this fiscal disparities mess.
Sure, Mr. Mayor and council, I'll wait and do that during my attorney report.
Thank you.
You bet.
So now I have to call for a public open forum, correct?
You do. So anyone who has a comment on the budget is able to do that at this time.
So at this time, I'd like to call for a public open forum regarding our 2024 levy and/or budget questions. If there's anyone online or in the room who would like to speak, please come up to the microphones and ask your questions.
The iPad.
Okay, I see a hand up on iPad.
Oh, that's the mouse.
Oh, never mind. It was just a mouse running across the TV screen. So, seeing and hearing none, I will close the public hearing with the right to reopen it if necessary. And I'll bring it back up to the board. And I guess at this point, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2319.
Correct.
2319, approving the 2023 preliminary tax levy for property taxes collected in 2024 in the amount of $4,232,386. Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
Any other questions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
Mr. Mayor, looking at the budget and the levy, Personnel Committee did discuss cost of living increase for staff members, and the recommendation from the Personnel Committee is a 3.5 cost of living increase. It is already included in the budget, as we discussed in the preliminary levy, and at this time, that would be the recommendation standing from the Personnel Committee.
And the resolution number is?
There isn't a resolution, it's just a motion to accept that recommendation.
Oh, got it.
So Mayor, so to Elizabeth, is that across the board for all employees then, at 3.5%?
That is across the board, 3.5%, yes, for all employees.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to approve. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, because that's the budget. We just did the levy. So you need a separate motion to accept the budget. She was just mentioning that the cost of living.
On the
is
top
built
of the
into
next page,
budget.
correct?
Because we have
Yep.
two, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. But you don't need a resolution, you just need the motion? Or do we need a number? Just a motion?
The next motion.
2020.
Correct. 2320.
Yep. Sorry. So I move to approve Resolution 2320, approving the 2024 City of Columbus budget in the amount of $5,157,455. Is there a second?
This is Janet, I second.
Any other questions or discussions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye. Thank you, everyone, and staff for all the hard
So
work.
do we also need a motion about the 3.5%?
No,
Or
it's
was that
it's
it?
built into the
It's
budget.
built into the budget, okay.
I think she was just calling it out because we talked about two different numbers before.
The additions,
Wait a minute, we have a question coming.
Sorry.
That's okay.
it was,
You have a question, I interrupted you, so.
Oh,
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, I thought
We
you had a-
figured it out, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, number 17, engineers report.
Good evening, Mayor and
Kevin.
council members. Kevin Bittner, city engineer. The only item I have on our agenda tonight is a closeout of the letter of credit for St. Clair Lakes addition. The project was successfully completed this past summer. We have no further punch list items, and the developer, Mr. Mark Olson of Joshua Markham Builders, has requested and provided the appropriate documentation in his request to collect the remaining balance of $54,180 on his letter of credit. And so I do recommend that we approve that.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make, this is Ron, I'll make the motion to move to approve St. Clair Lakes escrow reduction request in the amount of $54,180 based on the city engineer's memo dated 12/5/2023.
This is Sue, I'll second.
Any other questions or discussion?
Well, I just
Yeah,
have,
Mayor. Oh,
go ahead, Rob.
Okay, Mayor, we had some concerns brought to us about some trees that were hanging that might possibly hit a house. I think it was several council meetings back. Was there any resolution with that at all? I know I did talk to the DNR personally, and they said, well, that's really not their problem, being it's on DNR property, and if it fell, it wouldn't be at their fault. But did that developer get that figured out with that tree issue that was brought forward?
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, the property that these trees are on is city property, so it's ultimately our responsibility to work through that. I've identified trees, talked to a few homeowners, and we are currently waiting for the ground to freeze and the bald eagles to nest before we remove any trees.
So that's going to be at our cost, Jim, in this development?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I can explain. Yep, I can explain why. In the negotiations for reducing the setback from the ordinary high water mark from 150 feet to 75 feet, the DNR wanted a governmental agency to hold the area that is in outlot, is it?
Outlot C.
C, which is between the property line and the lake. So all that is protected area, and the condition by which the DNR would sign off on the agreement is that the city would hold that property. Afterwards, of course, we found out that that means clearing dead trees. So hopefully we don't get too many more of those requests, but Jim and I have talked about it, and Jim worked through that with the DNR, and that's why he knows the timing of when to take down trees so as not to disturb nesting eagles.
So the DNR has given us the authority to cut those trees down. I mean, I know it's city property, but I thought the DNR had told me that we'd possibly have to get their permission because it's within that buffer, and they're okay with that, Jim?
Yes, I did work through that with the DNR.
Okay, yeah, that was just my big concern with finalizing out this development, because there's a lot of houses with trees that look like they're gonna fall on them. So I just don't want the city responsible for that. So
Thank you. Sue?
Well, I just had a quick question. I think that development is full, right? It's completed, all the lots are purchased and houses are built?
No, I don't believe so. There's still
no.
a number of empty lots out there, I think, on that south cul-de-sac. I think most of those are undeveloped at this point, so.
Okay.
I noticed.
So we mainly got the developed portions where trees are hanging over houses. So
Do you know how many lots are left? I'm just curious.
I think
I
it's-
want to think like 4 or 5 at least.
There's probably more than that, I think.
I think
Okay.
it's half developed. I think last time I talked to Mark, he said he had half of them were sold. They might not have been built, but they're sold.
Okay, so about 10 unsold? Wasn't it around 20 that he was planning
I
on?
want to say it was 21.
Yeah.
So in there.
All right, it looks nice.
And
It does look nice. I think there's a couple of them that aren't listed because they're pulverizing the black dirt on a couple of those sections still before they put them up for sale. It appeared so.
all right. Anything else? Anyone? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye?
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rabbi.
And Jesse, aye.
That completes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Kevin. Attorney's report.
Mr. Mayor, just bridging back to the item on fiscal disparities, we met this evening to talk about a possible legislative program. As you know, we've taken a run at fiscal disparities a couple different years, some with a fair amount of success, but never across the finish line. And so since the city's in a fairly unique position where, as the city administrator described, the formula works against us. Why? Because you continue to have economic development. The city has really helped spur that with the bridge improvements and the funding that went into that and the local roads that are constructed around the bridge and other things that we do to kind of spur development in this community. Second, the formula considers your tax base per population. And since your population doesn't grow rapidly because you don't have a lot of room to grow, given both the topography and the wetlands and all of that, as your tax base grows, the net impact is reduced because of the fiscal disparities program. And that's an issue we've been monitoring and actually doing more than monitoring, actively trying to change the program. So we had a good meeting this evening, kind of a kickoff, if you will, looking at a legislative program, probably a three-pronged legislative program. One prong would be to continue to look at ways to change the fiscal disparities law either directly or indirectly. Second would be, as we do in most years, look for opportunities for transportation funding. As you may recall, since our population is under 5,000, we aren't eligible for the municipal state aid program. But because of our lobbying efforts and others in recent years, there's been more money coming to cities, and that's a good thing. And so we'll look at that opportunity. And the third thing would be to assist the track in, not so much assist the track, but monitor the sports betting legislation and be helpful where we can as a city. And I think in the past, the mayor and others have been willing to write letters of support to indicate how important that facility is as an employer and as tax base. So that's, at least at the moment, the three prongs. Elizabeth has scheduled a workshop with Tammy Amdahl, who will walk through the financial mechanics of that program. And then at that same meeting or at the subsequent meeting the next night, we'll have a formal legislative program for you to approve.
Muted.
Any other questions?
Oh, and I'll be remiss if not mentioning that both our Representative Nolan West and Senator Mike Kroon have reached out to us proactively to offer their assistance and really to be lead authors of the legislation for the fiscal disparities fix. And that really, I think, goes to the credit of the council who showed up for your day on the Hill and met with them and others. You know, that kind of, it shows the investment in time and effort when you show up at the legislature and you get to know the people that represent your community. So thanks to you all for doing that. We'll likely organize something similar this year and hopefully have some success around our legislative program.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Bill?
No, that's it.
Well, that's good news. We're starting early, before Christmas, before the new year, because they always get so busy afterwards that they don't have time to, if it's not already thought of and handed to them, they're so busy doing at least 100 other things that it's an easy way to get left in the dust. So maybe if we're ahead of the game this time, we might have more good results. So, thank you.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that. If we're on top of the bill list, we're gonna be getting moving quicker, right?
That's the idea. Drop early and push hard.
Yeah, this is way early, so thanks for that, Bill.
And Councilmember Hegland, I just have to say, has been in conversation with Senator Kroon, so that's been helpful as well, having someone as a liaison.
Yeah, same here.
Council members report. Ron?
I have nothing.
The only thing I have is we are having the Forest Lake Cable Commission holiday party tomorrow.
Behave yourself.
I have a
Pizza
couple
and cookies.
Yeah. I have a couple of things. On page 41 of our packet, I think it's 41, yes, 41 of our packet, there's a park board report. So I have a couple things to bring forth for council approval. The park board met on November 30th, spoke about a number of topics. One related to park maintenance. They invited Ryan from RVS to attend and to provide some feedback on anything that was new that we needed to consider from the past year. And we talked a bit about the condition of the grass and how he decides whether he needs to mow or not mow. And he's been very, I think, transparent in how he makes those kinds of decisions. Next year, he'll be putting forth a bid for the following 2 years. Next year's already under contract, but he'll be putting a bid in for the following 2 years. And so he gave a historical tally of the 16 years, excuse me, that he's been doing this and how many times he's mowed, and kind of tied that to the weather patterns and things like that. So on average, he's mowing about 18 times a year. And that is exactly what we used for the budget for this two year period. So he does a great job. Their company does a great job. He let us know that his brother Vic was retiring, so it would just be him out there next year. And he made some suggestions for projects that he says, I have a lot of time on that mower that I sit and think. So these are the things I thought would be nice to add to your park. And the park board took those all under consideration, and we'll talk about that more as they discuss the park master plan. They looked at the fee schedule. So every year, as you know, we go through the process of looking at the fees that we charge for the ball diamonds and for tournaments and for the picnic pavilion. And we learned something this year that I don't think the park board knew, and that is that the city is required to pay sales tax on the fees that we take in for these. So when we've been provided the revenue dollars, we've assumed that those are net dollars, and they're actually gross dollars. So we're not taking in as much as we thought we were. The park board has been really sensitive to not increasing rates and trying to stay kind of within line of our neighboring communities. I think access to our park is a very important priority for them. So with that in mind, they've decided that even though we were taking in less money than what we thought we were, that they would only raise the reservation fee for the ball fields by $1. It would go from $27 to $28. There'd be no increase in the other reservations. And if you crunch the numbers, that brings in about an extra $215, which they felt was justifiable, because we also learned that there's about $150 that gets generated in paying for the electricity in the picnic pavilion, and that cost does not get passed on to the people providing or reserving the pavilion. So this additional $215 would cover that cost. So I need to have a motion to accept that increase in their fee schedule. I could make the motion. How about that? So I would move to approve the recommendation of the park board to increase the ball field reservation from $27 to $28 with no other increase to the other reservations for the 2024
This is Sue, I'll second.
season. So I have a motion, and Sue seconded it.
I got a question. What about the trees here? Are we just going to make a new motion on that?
I was going to do that. I didn't look ahead. I see Elizabeth was more efficient. She put them all together, but we're already halfway through, so let's just do it as two separate motions.
Okay.
Say before we get far ahead, I was just curious if we could go back to the park maintenance thing with the RVS was stating in there that possibly cutting some trees down to slow down the oak wilt. We had put money in the budget in the past, or did we take that out of the budget?
Nope, I'm gonna cover that in the tree thing. You're right, we do have
Okay.
money in the budget, but I'll cover that next.
All right, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye?
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Bye-bye.
Chelsea, aye.
Okay, so then moving on to the tree service. There was dollars put into the budget, a total of $4,000 for tree maintenance. There were, I believe, was it 7 dead trees identified on the north end of the park, there were two quotes that Jim got on those, but there wasn't enough detail in one of the quotes, so we're going to go back and get those. But in the process of discussing the tree problem, they all agreed with Ryan that there's some neighboring properties that have pretty significant oak wilt, and the trees are clustered pretty close together, and it would probably make sense to do some prophylactic tree removal to try to slow down that spread. So they asked that, that Jim have one of the tree arborists come out and kind of give a recommendation of how many we should take down and kind of which trees should go down. And in anticipating that, they put another $15,000 into the budget, or increase it. I have to look here. Did they increase it to 15, or did they add another 15?
They added a line item and put
That's right.
$15,000 in that line item.
Yep, so the 4,000 would be for the dead trees, and the 15,000 would be for the maintenance. Thank you. So they did that from dollars that they already had in their budget, so this does not affect our levy or our budget. It's in their park capital fund, so they are perfectly correct in making that decision. But they're planning, assuming that they will have to take down some trees once we get a recommendation of which trees to take down. So I'll take any questions on that before I make the motion.
I just have one question. At the end, you have here that the trees need to be removed to prevent oak wilt spread from neighboring properties. Did we get it? Was it spread from neighboring properties to us?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what their concern is. And I don't know if that, does it spread through canopy? I don't know if it's because the canopies are overlapping and so you space them out and there's less likelihood of that? I don't know. I'm not a tree
I've dealt
arborist.
with oak wilt on my property, and it's a root bound, or it comes from branches that break in the wind. It's on the east side of the park, not the north, just to
I thought it was up, no, the dead trees are on the north side.
well, yeah, well.
Yeah,
If you look at 165th and Notre Dame goes north, 165th goes east. So,
Thank you.
I believe
for that.
you. I believe you.
you're not the
Yeah,
only
that
one.
oak wilt, that's been a rampant problem
Well,
in Columbus. But yeah, like Ron said, across the street.
Well, and that's why they're having an arborist come out to basically advise us on what we can do to try to, but in the past, the part of the remedy is thinning out the trees.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's, I mean, I know that we don't send out any communications or information about when not to cut down oak trees. And, I mean, the first time we did it, we found out from the guy who was cutting that he goes, well, you can't cut during these months. You
Right.
have to do it before here or after here.
Yep.
I had no idea, so
Yep.
I don't know.
Well, we used to have a tree guy that was part of our budget, and years ago that was taken out, but that was what that person did, was to assist residents with questions about things like oak wilt and emerald ash borer and those types of things and how best to try to manage for that. I think you can still get some information from like the University of Minnesota Extension Service, but you're right, there's not really a good resource for our residents on how to manage that through the city. It's too bad.
Yeah, I think it got cut out of the budget before any of us were on council.
Yep.
Elizabeth, wasn't that to the
I'm happy to see that we brought it back, right? And now it's being utilized, so I'm happy about that. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, the state grants were through the state or the DNR, and we did have a forester, I think the first 15 years I was here. First it was Steve Cook, and then it was Sam Glockson, and part of their job duties was to acquire grants and administer, and at that point it was oak wilt, and now we've more, you have the emerald ash borer and some other things, but it's the same group, you know what I mean, that sponsor those grants. It's just a matter of whether you want a tree program or not. But Chapter 20 was repealed many, many years ago, and that's the chapter that oversaw that kind of Arbor Day and all those activities.
Maybe if we solve fiscal disparities, we can put all that extra money to a tree program.
Oh,
There we go. I'll be first in line to make that suggestion. So if there aren't any other questions about that, then I would move to approve the change in the budget, adding $15,000 for tree maintenance to counteract the oak wilt problem.
Is it
Second.
Ron? I'll second that.
Any other questions, anyone? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye.
And then the second thing I was going to talk about is our, where we are at with the city administrator search RFP. And so I'm going to invite Sue to chime in at any point during this time. So a few council meetings ago, we were authorized to move forward with releasing a request for proposal, or RFP, to firms that provide executive search services to cities and municipalities that are looking for city administrators. We did move forward with doing that. We put the RFP out. December 8th was the date that they had to respond by. We sent it out to 10 different firms, and we got back 3 responses. And we had some further questions for 2 of the respondents. We met a couple of days ago and went over the responses and kind of made a decision on who we would go forward with, who we may go forward with. There's a couple of things I need to get feedback from the council on. So I don't have any recommendation that I can tell you, here's what we're recommending for an RFP, because we're still negotiating. But it would be really helpful to hear from you where you stand on 2 issues. One is the price, like what's your not to exceed value for this? And the second is in negotiating with the respondents to try to get the price down. We narrowed the scope of the services that we were asking for, and in turn, what that caused them to do was to remove their guarantee, which was one of the big pluses of using a search firm. So, in the responses that we got back, we were offered at the full price that they proposed, a 2-year guarantee, which meant that if the candidate that they came up with and that we ultimately had hired left for any reason within 2 years, they would redo the search for just the cost of the expenses, which is like the fees that they have to charge for background checks and things like that. So 2 of them had a 2-year guarantee, 1 of them had a 1-year guarantee. The 2 that we're still negotiating with, one was 2 years and the other was 1 year, and they're both taking the guarantee off the table, and it's non-negotiable, is what we're hearing. So I guess let's start with that, because that's the easiest thing. How strongly do you feel that you need to have a guarantee? I'll start with Ron. Oh, sure.
If I may, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Hegland, are they removing the guarantee in exchange for a reduced fee?
Yes.
Okay, so they're tied together.
Yes. And essentially, they're doing that because we're saying you don't need to provide these services, and they're saying, well, if we don't provide these services, we have less information about the candidates, and so we feel like they're higher risk for not staying, and that's their rationale.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bill, for going ahead of me.
Oh,
The only thing, I don't, there's no numbers here, right? So
Well, that's going to be the next thing we talk about. I'm just saying, like, how strongly do you feel that a guarantee is something we really need to have? Because that may, if I hear that you all feel like no, we need to have that guarantee, then we're not going to be able to negotiate as low a price. That's just the way it's going to be.
I can see that, but
Well, how much cost?
cost is always,
The amount that we're seeing them being willing to reduce in lieu of the guarantee is somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000.
How much for the whole show?
I don't want to tell you that because we're still negotiating, so I can't really tell you.
so you're saying about $3,000 they'll give us a guarantee, or 3 or 4,000 they'll guarantee for 2 years?
One is 2 years and one is 1 year.
And they'll guarantee what? They'll drag somebody new in if they have to?
They'll do another search. for just the cost of the fees. So when I say that, there's certain things that they have to pay, like the background check fees and things like that. So they're not going to swallow those costs the second time around, but they won't charge their professional fee, which is the bigger chunk of the bid.
So how about if I come around the back door and say, so what percentage is this? I'm just looking at it this way. If we're going to pay for a guarantee, in other words, if we don't pay for the guarantee and they leave, what are we losing? That's what I'm looking at.
Well,
We just paid somebody, let's say $10,000 to do this, and we're going to pay $3,000 that they'll guarantee it, do it again if we have a problem. But if it's nickels and dimes here,
well, let me start again. Here are the two options you have. I'm asking you these questions because if we could come up with a consensus, then I would be asking you to authorize us to move forward to negotiate the terms on this within the constraints of whatever the conditions are you come up with. And then we can go ahead and do that and not have to call a special meeting, which is the second option. If you're feeling like, hey, I don't have enough information to weigh in on this, which is perfectly legitimate, then in order for us to stay in our timeline, we would need to call a special meeting next week. Or I don't even know if you have enough time. Do you have enough time to do it for next week? Okay. Which means we'd have to all come into, and then we would negotiate the best thing we could and then come back to you and say, here's what we can do. So I'm thinking that so close to the holidays, people would rather not have a special meeting. So, but if you feel like that's the preferable thing, that's perfectly okay. Go ahead.
And we could do it virtually.
Yeah.
I'm just going to see if this helps at all. Mr. Mayor and Councilmember, would it be helpful, Councilmember Hagelin, to just start with the budget authority you would like? Because if you're going to hire somebody based upon the council's direction and probably motion, then you'd need a maximum budget, right? And then you can back into the guarantee discussion from there. Does that help, maybe flipping the conversation? Is that what you were looking for, is a maximum authority?
Yeah, yes. But I guess I didn't want to throw a number out there because I kind of,
But then they can't give you authority to wrap it up.
I guess I thought they probably have a number in their head that they are going to have to force themselves to say out loud that says, I don't want to spend more money than this.
Okay.
That's why, but if you really can't bring yourself to do it, I can throw a number out there, but it's going to be higher than what you're probably going to like, because that'll give us the most latitude.
well, let me ask this question, Janet. You and Sue have been negotiating this, doing this process.
Megan has been really
Yeah,
involved, and
Megan in there,
Elizabeth,
too.
yep.
And Elizabeth knows a lot about it. Maybe Jack out there knows a lot about this. And I'm just foreign here. This is a no man's land for me. I don't understand what's normal, what's abnormal. That's why I ask those questions. I don't know what the cost is going to be, but I put my faith in you two and Elizabeth and Megan. If you think we're in a comfortable range and we're not being the Cadillac or the Pinto, I don't know, wherever we're going to be in the funding, I'd support whatever you guys decide.
Okay. Well, I mean, when we started down this process, we were all guessing what it would be, and I think we said somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000. And guess what? They kind of came in between that range. So, if you're looking at it and going, no way, we aren't paying $25,000 or we're not paying $20,000, that would be really helpful to know. If you feel like you just can't say that because you don't have enough information, I totally am okay with that. Then I just think we'll move on and do the best job we can and then come back with the information in a special meeting. And if that can't be next week because people aren't available, then we just lose a week or so in the process. It's not the end of the world.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think it helps that you have two viable candidates, because even if, in order to empower the Personnel Committee to finish this work, you would have to set a not-to-exceed amount, just as you do with staff projects.
Yep.
So I think if you can get to that not-to-exceed and the question about the guarantee, then I'm comfortable as your city attorney that they can finish the work for you. And if you can't, for some reason, or as Councilmember Hagelin has said, you want more information, then that would be done in another meeting.
So if you want me to throw a number out, I would say not to exceed value of 21,000.
21?
Yep.
That's an odd number.
You asked me,
And
give
Janet, this was for the search for,
the
the
permanent city administrator.
yeah, okay.
What are they looking at?
I mean, Elizabeth, do you think that's a reasonable
Okay.
number to, I mean, you heard the
Yeah,
conversation.
I'm, whether, yes, I do. Whether it's
Okay.
21, 22, I mean,
Yep.
that was the range.
I'd agree with that, 21,000.
Okay, then how do you feel about the guarantee?
There'd have to be a guarantee.
Yeah, for 21,000, I think you need a warranty on it.
Okay.
For 1 or 2 years.
That's a good,
about
I mean,
mileage?
that's a good question.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I'll tell you, one firm is a national firm that's very well known. The other firm is also a big firm, but is more regional. So I think they're both good choices, and they both should be able to do the job and do a really good job.
again, we're in an unknown, for me, it's unknown. So how many city administrators work a year and quit and move on? I mean, is this like, I know Medtronics, and you take Boston Scientific and all those guys, they jump back and forth, engineers, and 3M and all
Well,
that.
I mean, they've given us a list of the communities that they have provided city administrators for. I don't remember that it was like within the last year, or, I mean, I'm sure it was within the last few years. The one that's regional has a lot more in Minnesota than the one that's national. But the person that's national, the lead we'd be working with, lives in Cottage Grove, so she's local. So I think, like I said, I think both of them are good candidates that could do a good job for us.
And when they talk about, the guarantee, there's so many things that can happen now, which have happened recently, just in the job market being the way it is, that, they're searching and they find, 5 good candidates, and things just move so fast in that world that somebody could accept it, and then they get another position or another offer, 2 weeks later, that's better than the one that they got, and they just are like, sorry, I'm taking the other job. I mean, that would be an example of why we would want the guarantee, so they can start over, go to the next.
Well, so in other words, they could have somebody and we could like them until we make the offer, they can bomb out anytime then? So that's not what the guarantee.
The guarantee is after an offer. So after they accept the offer, and it could be something as Sue described, or it could be that they get in the job, they work here for a year. Maybe they're fairly young in their career, they thought this is a great thing, and then next thing you know, they're getting an offer from Woodbury to be the city administrator there, and they're like, ooh, that's a much better jump for me. So then they go to Woodbury after a year. I mean, it could be lots of different things, or they get relocated, or their health fails, or who knows. I mean, there's a million reasons why people can't work for.
So Janet, the guarantee would be that they would have to find us the next person, like
They would redo
best person.
they would redo the search, find us another pool of candidates, and they wouldn't charge us for it except for the fees that they incur from the other, other organizations that they have to pay to do background checks and things like that.
Yeah. Inner dates and such.
I'd go with the 2-year then.
Needs to be 2.
Right.
What do you think, Rob?
I don't know. I feel like it's a lot of money, and we really have to have the insurance on it because the market's so tight, and I see it on a daily basis. I got friends that they're jumping for the next best thing on a regular basis. So there's got to be some sort of, and maybe Jack works out, but for how long, I don't know. Right. So.
You can say hi to him, he's in the room.
Yeah.
Well, right. Hey, Jack. I saw your truck there earlier. I knew you were there.
So
But
are you in line with the not to exceed 21K number?
it's a lot of money. I guess that's where I'm at. is the census of the rest of the council? I know, Ron, you were kind of saying that's a lot, but is everybody kind of in the census that that's what we're gonna have to?
I think that's what we're trying to find out right now.
Yeah, yeah. Oof. Because we already paid the one gal 10 grand, right, to do the organizational thing,
14.
and 14, okay, a little more. So we're getting really deep into this thing, but we're trying to find the right person. But even so, they leave after 2 years. We're out, 30-some thousand.
There's no guarantees after 2 years,
No,
that's for
it's
sure.
just such a gamble, and you understand it, right? We're playing with taxpayers' money, so it's
Well, yes, it's a lot of money, but it's also a lot of work, and someone's got to do it, and nobody does it for
right.
free,
And
except for
and
me.
we don't have the capacity as council people to go out and do it. Rather, the personnel committee, right? So
Well, I mean, that, you can't ask the personnel committee to do a search like
no,
that. I mean,
no, that's what I'm saying.
yeah. I mean, we
So
can certainly post positions, we can certainly like dig through applications and things, but you're not going to get the quality of a pool by following
and
that.
and Janet, I know you and Sue had went through like the League of Cities, and that was kind of a no go, and it was kind of a grace that we got Jack to fill in at this point, right? And
Well, what we went to the league for was a list of city administrators that had retired or moved on and were willing to be interims. So we started with that list, and we also got a list of firms that do the kind of stuff that Ellen is doing for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, you were going to say something.
thank you.
I was just going to say the work that Ellen is doing is more organizational, and I think that work needed to be done regardless of whether I was leaving or not. I think it's valuable, and it's going to be used for a long time and into the future. And I think even the suggestion she's going to make is going to set groundwork for future work. So I think that money is well spent, and I think it was much needed.
I would definitely agree with that. And I also think that as we negotiate with these firms, for them to know that we have engaged a professional to help us with that, I think, that will offer, I think, some reassurance to them about how serious we are with it and that we're positioning ourselves well. Maybe that'll make them feel like they can knock down a notch or two from where they are. So I didn't hear an answer from you, Rob. Sorry, I'm going to be pushy. 21K, yes or no?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay. And then, are you for guarantee?
Are you feeling like you might be able to get them down a little lower with some assurances, like some insurances?
That's what we're going to try, but
Okay.
what I'm trying to do is be able to move forward without having to get you guys to come back together for a meeting. But we can certainly do it, that we can just do the best job we can and come back and say, here's what we're gonna, here's what we accomplished, and you can approve it or not.
I mean, if you gotta have another meeting, I'm okay as long as it's over Zoom anytime during the day, and most evenings, right?
So it sounds like you'd rather have the meeting than try to do this, like authorize us for a certain dollar amount.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Just
fair.
kind of come up with options and then we can all roll through it, is
Okay.
kind of my thought.
That's all right. Okay. What about you, Mayor?
It's not a small amount of money, I get it, but we just spent $15,000 for trees that we're going to cut down, burn, and haul away. This is a job that should last. Can we get a 24-year guarantee?
No competes aren't allowed anymore.
So anyway, I'm available anytime for any meeting. I'm sure you guys can do it. 20 grand isn't the end of the world.
Well, I know, and we talked about this last time, and I said how important it is. This is an important position, and we're going to have to pay somebody something. We can't do it on our own, and that's about what they're coming in at, and we're not going to do it. We have to do something, so why not pay the right professional to do the job, and we're working on them. And we're very much going through every detail of what they're offering and tweaking it and questioning. So we're not just taking the first number, we're working with them. So I think that's the best we can do.
So am I hearing you saying you'd rather have a meeting and come back with the specific information that you can say yay or nay to?
No, I think I don't care, whichever you want to do. I mean, I'm trusting your judgment, or we all are, and also you're the ones doing the work. So I think I'm in Ron's boat. Just do what you do. I'd love to have a meeting and hear it as soon as possible. I don't want to read it in the paper before we hear it, but, so whatever that means.
Thank you.
Yep.
So then I guess what I'm assuming you're okay with the numbers, and I'm okay with that. So it looks like that's what we'll move forward with. We won't try to schedule a second meeting or a meeting. We'll go back and work with Megan and Elizabeth and contact these firms and try to negotiate the best deal we can within those constraints.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, if this were to come back at the last meeting of the month, then you would make that motion then. If it's not going to come back at all, then you would need to delegate that
Right.
function. So
So
perhaps,
that's what we need to do tonight.
yeah.
Yep.
But should we throw a special meeting to get it done and by,
So can you clarify, Bill? I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Sure.
Please clarify.
Sure, the alternatives are you get a motion tonight to delegate the function of hiring the search firm to the Personnel Committee with that number. And then negotiate the best deal you can with the guarantee is what I'm
Yep.
hearing. The second is that you do all of that, but the actual contract comes back for approval at the last meeting of the month, to the mayor's comment that then this body would have the full detail before it's public information.
Okay.
And
Then you don't have a special meeting in between.
you don't have a special meeting in between. I was suggesting the special meeting because you can't post the position or do any of the stuff that will really get the ball moving until you sign the contract with them. You can't sign the contract until, we come to agreed upon terms. So in order to, we wanted to get the thing posted before the end of the calendar year. And in order to do that, you either authorize us to go ahead and do this, or we have a special meeting. Otherwise, we lose a couple weeks. That's not the end of the world. We can do that too. But I just, whatever you're most comfortable with, that's what I'm asking you to tell me. So kind of three different options. Authorize us to move forward, and you're not going to hear again until we tell you who the winner is. Authorize us to move forward. I've got some good information about what you're comfortable with, and we will have a special meeting so we can get this done before the end of the year. Or authorize us to move forward with this information, and we'll put it on the agenda for the end of the calendar year, and we'll just be a couple weeks behind in our timeline.
So I would like to see it sooner than later. So that narrows it down to two, which is either give you authority
Or have a special meeting.
or give you authority to continue and bring back with a special meeting, bring back your information and your prices with a special meeting.
And both of them are fine. I mean, really, I want everybody to feel really comfortable with this, so I'm not pushing for anything. I want everybody to feel like that's the best fit for us, so don't be afraid to say what you want.
So can everyone meet during the day sometime?
Do
Generally,
you have to have a special notice to the public?
I would have to post a special meeting. I do have enough time to post that meeting. You just have to tell me what day. It can't be this week. It has to be, because I need at least 3 days. So I think you're, good for a couple of days next week. I don't think you want to do it on Friday, but.
Well, you guys are closed on Friday,
But when we get there, we will be.
but Thursday's open. I mean, I'm open.
You could do it.
Not tomorrow.
No, a week from Thursday.
I'll be out of town.
Okay.
But you got.
Oh, we could do it virtually.
Yeah,
You got a quorum though, right?
Yeah, yep. I mean, or you could do it on Wednesday after the holiday party, if everyone's willing to hang around for a little bit after that.
That's an
Oh, we have a
option.
planning commission meeting that
I
night.
know, but the party
Right
gets over
before,
at 2,
in
so.
between.
So Bill or anyone else, what's the difference? If we give them permission to do it, or wait till after the punch bowl's empty on Wednesday and then give them permission?
It's exactly as Councilmember Hegland said, there's no difference other than your comfort level, so.
All right. Well, I'll play the middle of the road. I don't care. Ron?
I'm with you, Mayor. I kind of said my point in the beginning. 21, take it, see what you can negotiate. I just think we got to get, like the mayor, I think we have to get it on the table and get this thing moving. Because things, I don't know, people can get jobs elsewhere if we're just sitting behind the 8 ball waiting and waiting. And
Well, let's make the motion then to give the Personnel Committee the authority
Go ahead, you'll finish it.
To negotiate up to.
to negotiate up to 21,000 for the search firm for our administrator
With a 2-year guarantee.
with a 2-year guarantee.
And I would second that.
So for further discussion. So then that knocks out the 1-year person, right?
Unless they
Or
change,
you
unless they
nego-
change
yeah.
their offer.
Yeah, so they could get the same money, just add a year on, from their point of view.
I don't think they will, but that's, I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask. I think that's just what they always do for everybody.
So then are you both going to choose one? So you come back and say, sorry, this
Well-
is one we chose and it,
Correct. We will make a recommendation. You'll still have to vote though, right?
No, they would give us authorization to engage, to
Okay.
engage in a contract, and we would come back and tell them who
But we do have 4 people on the committee.
right?
yes.
And
Who are all the 4, Sue? It's you, I thought it was just you and,
Janet, Megan, and
We're the
Elizabeth.
voting members, and Elizabeth is there to keep us honest.
okay.
And
Not
Mr.
4.
Mayor, I think it goes without saying that if the Personnel Committee has any question about whether their selection matches the discussion tonight, they'll bring it back. Or seek a special meeting. So you're delegating this function with this discussion, these parameters kind of in place.
All right, I'll call for the vote.
Ron, I.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, nay.
Rossi, aye.
All right, thank you.
Well, Merry Christmas, everyone. That's your Christmas present.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy. Got any more lumps of coal like that? I don't have anything else. I'm done. I think I'm done with my,
Hey, we lowered the levy, right? Come on.
I'm done with my report.
All right, thank you.
You had a couple of things you wanted to say, though. I'm
Oh,
reminding
Rob,
you.
anything you would like to?
Yeah, no, I had brought it up to Elizabeth, but there's just a little terrorizing going on in the neighborhood, and I guess some individuals that reached out to me north of the town hall, they had asked that I just kind of share it with the public that there's some individuals going around kind of hitting their houses and things like that. Other than that, it just kind of seems like a scaring thing. The police were called. This happened over the weekend, but they just wanted it out to the public to look out for a couple individuals. But other than that, I have nothing to report other than that tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have only one thing to report. Today was the last senior citizen luncheon of the year. There was our Christmas luncheon at the Running Aces. And I heard that Running Aces picked up their tab for them. So they'll have a little leftover money in their kitty so they can
That's so nice of them.
do a couple extra dinners next year. And everybody had a great time and it was real good. So that was good. I didn't attend. Last year we had gone, right? This year
We didn't get invited this year, so we must not have been good guests.
yeah, we were. All right, so that's that. No code enforcement report. Public Works, Jim.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
No report. Public communications.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I have a couple things going kind of back to what Lori presented on regarding the meeting schedule. There it is. The first thing is I'm just going to encourage you to start thinking about Council Corner. I will have an email drafted that I'm going to send out tomorrow morning just to gauge everyone's interest in continuing that. I assume there still is, to know if you want to get scheduled again like we have the last few years, if you just want to make it whenever you feel like putting a pen to paper. Just sort of start brainstorming those sorts of things. I believe Elizabeth and I agreed that that was a discussion that would officially be happening at the first workshop of January in anticipation of the organizational meeting. But I just wanted to give you a month to sort of start thinking about those sorts of things. A similar thing like that cannot wait until the organizational meeting is Planning Commission liaison, because the Planning Commission will meet a week before you even have your organizational meeting. So I just wanted to first get your feedback if you all, I assume again, you want to continue with the liaison process and position. If any of you wanted to make any changes to that, just to get your feedback about those sorts of things before I send out that email to start scheduling. Of course, it was a quarterly position. There's 5 of you. So the council member that did not get to serve this year would, if they so choose, they'd have first dibs on whatever quarter they want to work in next year or whatever time period if you guys wanted to change that up. But yeah, I wanted to put that all out on the plate for you guys to be able to hash out before we start planning this position out.
Thank you.
Before our planning commissioners bolt out of the office, how do you guys feel about how that liaison position is working for you? I mean, we took it on for a couple of reasons. One is that there were some planning commissioners that didn't feel comfortable coming before the council and doing a report. Like they would be fine on the planning commission, but they didn't want to have to do a report. And then the second was that we were trying to eliminate the problem of having you guys go through all the motions and all the work that you do, and then it comes to the council and there's a policy issue behind it, and then, which isn't what you would normally deal with, and then everything gets all undone. So by having a council person as a liaison, if there is an underlying policy question, they can kind of bring that up and it can get addressed in a different way so that it's not such a sequential process where what you work on, it actually gets undone, and that's so frustrating. So I think it was really meant to help you guys. So if you're feeling like, we don't need to do it. So I'm curious how you feel about it. So you're voting to keep it on? Okay. How about you, Lynn? Okay.
So if we keep it the same, you're happy with that? Yeah, either way. Yeah. And when do we have to make this decision by?
So what I was going to do is in that same email I have drafted, just to start getting, like we did last year, getting an idea of maybe you already have a vacation scheduled, you're out Q3, so you don't sign up for Q3 or whatever it is. You want to sign up for a specific schedule so we can try to make it work with everyone's life. Or as I pitched forward too, maybe you want to switch from a quarterly to something else. I don't know. I just wanted to get your feedback before we started laying the groundwork for making that schedule so that you guys are ready to go for January, whatever the first Wednesday is.
Yeah. And did you say we were one short?
So right, quarterly, right? There's 4 quarters, but there's 5 council members. So not to put them on the spot, but Rob was the one that didn't get to be a planning commission liaison this year. So he would have first dibs on a getting scheduled next year, just to make sure it's fair so everybody has their chance to have that role.
No, but weren't you short one meeting coming up, you said? or do they miss?
They start, the planning commission meeting starts before our meetings
Before your organization.
in January.
Yes. Yeah.
'Cause there's a meeting January 3rd.
So there's a risk of not having a liaison for the first meeting.
Right.
Unless we just say we're going to do it, and now then you can send the email out, and we'll just get it
I
scheduled.
can just do that. I
Could
have
you,
next
could
week.
you spill over?
Yeah, I'm on next week, and then 2 weeks it'll be that. So pencil me in for that.
I think that should take over in January, right? Because I'm the next person. Is that the idea?
And that could work too, whichever
That
you
could
guys
work
want to
too,
go
yeah.
with.
That's fine too.
Okay.
I mean, Rob,
So-
if you're available and willing, that'd be fine if you wanted to take the first quarter.
Yeah, so that'd be the first planning commission of January, would it be?
Correct.
Maybe January, February, March.
Which is, we have our
Yep.
schedule here.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that settled, I mean, it sounds like at least we have our Q1 scheduled. I will send out that email to sort of start getting the feedback for everybody else for when they want to get scheduled for the rest of the year. And then like I said, just sort of start jotting down your notes however you want to tackle Council Corner, and you guys can have that discussion in full at the January workshop for the organizational meeting.
And I'm going to weigh in really quickly on the council corner thing. I am almost done with the one for November, so you'll be getting
Okay,
that
great.
tonight or tomorrow morning. But I find it a lot harder to do it on a monthly basis. It just feels like so much time goes by between the meetings. I find it hard. And I know that doing it after each can be burdensome too, but I think that's something to consider. But the other thing to consider is what Paul from LATV had suggested, which was the podcast. And I don't know, I mean, he was willing to sort of host that and set it up, and so maybe that is a different option we could choose instead of Council Corner. So not looking for an answer now, but it's something we could think about for that January organizational meeting, whether or not it's easier to do something like a podcast than doing a a written report thing that goes onto the,
Sure. Yeah, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
Connor says you can post a podcast to the website too.
yeah.
Or at
yeah.
least a link, so.
Or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically you'd go into a studio that Paul has, and
Right.
however you want to set it up, if it's an interview or if it's a couple people talking about some topic or whatever. But that might be less burdensome than trying to write something up and still and we could see how well it works and how well people like it in terms of getting information out to them. So think about that.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Just keep an eye on your inboxes now. I'll incorporate our notes from this evening, and you'll get an email soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City Administrator's Report. Elizabeth?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I have two things under my report. The first one is the agreement, let's see, hang on a second. The first one is the
Voting up? No.
Voting.
Municipal agreement. Page 43.
Yes. The first one is the, I see that I've mixed up the motions again. The first one is the voting operations, so that's on page 51. So this agreement is with the state of Minnesota. This is, the legislature did allocate dollars towards voting, and I want to just bring your attention to page 51 under 2.3, and Columbus was allocated $439.06 to offset the cost for the entire year of elections.
Go crazy, Elizabeth.
So I understand in its wisdom that they wanted to fund operations of elections, but I think they severely underfunded the true cost of administering an election, considering the total allocation to the county was $67,239. It just, I think there's a disconnect on just how much money it costs to administer elections if you're going to have each municipality actually do the election functions. It's different if it's county-based and they administer the elections. That's a much different cost factor if you're putting it driver license bureaus or something of that nature. But asking 21 municipalities to undertake elections, that budget is just not nearly enough. So maybe we can also mention to Senator Kroon and Representative Nolan that it just is, especially next year with free elections, that $400 is such a small amount that in this particular case, it will probably be used for equipment maintenance. You know what I mean? And it won't go any further than that, because even our equipment maintenance is going to be more than $400.
Well, and plus they've extended the early voting and I mean, so it's not just the election day and having, you know, the judges that you pay. It's all of the other, whatever, 3 weeks of 46 days, whatever it is, that you have to essentially be a polling place.
So what does it cost
I would agree.
in a year?
You know, I think this year or next year in 2024, I think you're looking at least $20,000 for all 3 elections. You know, because they extended direct balloting. It used to be 7 days, now it's 17 days. I mean, and it's during, you know, open hours that you have elections. So you have to man those stations.
And don't you have a Saturday or two that you have to throw in there?
There's Saturday hours, there's late night hours. I mean, there's all sorts of things that they put new requirements in, and this $439.06 is supposed to cover that. And it just, there's just no connect, there was no connect to that. That isn't even, you know what I mean, going to, like I said, it'll cost maintenance of, you know what I mean, our equipment, if that. So, so again, the agreement is to accept the dollars for allocated to Columbus and have Anoka County administer them appropriately. So my recommendation is that you accept the money and they allocate it as indicated in that agreement.
Well, what happens if we say no? Well, then they're paid. Send them back a letter that says we will not have elections for $400.
You do
Have
that.
the elections regardless.
Yeah, you do that.
So Elizabeth, who makes the decision on if the county runs it? Is it the county?
The county, each county individually decides how they're going to administer elections and how they're going to do that through the municipalities. And in Anoka County, many years ago, they disbanded the elections department, right? You know, today there's only 4 or 5 of them, and then they hire seasonal employees to administer absentee balloting. And so what they decided was that each municipality was going to administer elections individually, which really put a big burden on the smaller cities because you have to man it. It's mandated that you man it. So, you know, previous years, I'm pulling from every department. You know what I mean, to cover 8 hours of voting. And you can have election judges come in, but you do have to supplement it. There's different rules for what they call envelope service versus direct balloting. So lots of training, you know, involved. And then if you don't have a big enough pool of election judges, again, you rely on staff and you're pulling people because people are showing up and voting and you don't know when they're going to show up. So 2 years ago, we set up the community center for our direct balloting. I know Connor and Eller, and we rotated through the 3rd station, and then we had 2 election judges because you have 5 stations for direct balloting. So it, you know, again, you have to schedule all those election judges and make sure you're, you know, balanced and all those other things with parties. And so it gets quite costly. And it doesn't matter if 2 voters come in or 100 voters come in, you still have to set up.
Are we, is Anoka County an odd county, or do most counties do that? I mean, the metro counties.
You know, I know.
Who do you talk to? Do you go to our commissioners and pound on the door and say?
They're the ones that the Anoka County Commissioners who made that decision. I know in Washington County, you know, I live in Washington County. I vote at the driver license bureaus. I mean, that's who, you know what I mean? I actually, when I vote, I go over to the Forest Lake driver's license and they give me my grant ballot and then I vote. So it's very, you know what I mean? So there, it's always, you know what I mean? They do have people that do that and such. And it does make it easy because each of the municipality doesn't have, they don't have that. Now, what they do have is on election day, each city has elections. So they don't delegate that. It's the absentee portion that's at the driver's license, but on election day, you go to your municipality to vote.
All right.
So I'll move to approve the State of Minnesota Voting Operations Technology and Election Resources Voter Account County Municipality Agreement. Boy, that's a mouthful.
I'll second that. Any other questions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, I.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
The second item that's on the agenda packet is the agreement extending and amending the memorandum of understanding for economic development participation. And this has been an ongoing program for 5 years. This particular memorandum of understanding will expire, and there is a typo. So in recital number 3, it should say January 10th, 2024. It was instituted in 2019, and the 5-year term will expire on January 10th, 2024. And what they're asking is to extend it 1 year to January 10th, 2025, because they haven't met all their goals and all of their initiatives. So they want to extend it, and then they'll come back with a new one in 2025. My recommendation is that you do approve the extension. I think during those 5 years, they had 3 different people in the role for economic development manager, and I think they've provided service to us, and they've helped us along the way when we've had economic development questions. So I think it's been a valuable service for the money that it costs.
So I'll make the motion to approve the agreement extending and amending the memorandum of understanding for Anoka County Economic Development to January 10th, 2025. Is there a second?
This is Janet, I second.
Any other questions? Then I'll call for the vote.
Ron, I.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye.
I have nothing further. Oh, I do
No,
have
you
something
do
else.
too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, wait a minute, I do have something else. City staff had an opportunity to look at the calendar after their request to move the holiday to Tuesday, after the Tuesday after Christmas. They realized what a short week it was going to be and how much work that we had to get done before the end of the year. So the request is to close the office Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday versus Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So they would like to change the holiday office closing from 12/26 to 12/22.
So this is Janet. I move to approve changing the holiday office closing schedule from 12/26 to 12/22.
This is Sue, I'll second.
Any other questions? I'll call for the vote.
Ron, I.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse,
And now I have nothing further.
all right. Announcements and reminders. Planning Commission is next Wednesday at 6 p.m., December 20th. Our holiday luncheon is December 20th, Wednesday at noon to 2 p.m. City Council meeting is the 27th at 6 p.m., and the full calendar is on the back. So with that, I'll make the motion to adjourn our meeting. Is there a second?
This is Sue, I'll second.
I'll call for the vote.
Ron, I.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.